Mahami Matters with Chris Adams, powered by CJA Consulting.
It's crazy that an international CEO can be suffering from chronic imposter syndrome. When we're in a high-stress environment, we lose cognitive function, which is why it's so important to detune our nervous system, doing micro breaks all day, every day. And people see that and they become curious. They want to know more about it. And you become a better leader, you become a better husband, a better father.
Welcome to Mahami Matters, the place where credibility meets clarity in the world of legal and professional services. I'm your host, Chris Adams, founder of Mahami and CJA Consulting. Today, we're diving deep into a subject that doesn't always make it into the boardroom or any part of the office for that matter, but affects so many of the professionals we work with. Burnout, identity, and what happens when success just isn't enough. My guest today is Stephen Hinds, or Stef as many know him, a retired Army officer, executive coach, HR leader, and founder of Beyond Training International. Stef works with senior professionals, from lawyers to founders to high net worth individuals, helping them to reconnect with purpose, rediscover clarity, and build the kind of success that actually feels successful. Today, we're going to be talking about the hidden drivers of stress and burnout in the legal world and other professional services as well, and why some of the most accomplished professionals still feel lost, and most importantly, what you can do if you're feeling that way as well. Whether you're a managing partner, an ambitious associate, or another type of professional navigating your next chapter, this episode's for you. So let's dive in. Hi, Stef. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on Mahami Matters today. Can you give us a bit of intro to your background and your current work?
So I'm Stef, as you say. I'm 58 years old, Scottish by birth, living in Germany now. I live in Germany because I spent 29 years of my adult life serving in the British military, most of which was at least stationed in Germany, deployed all around the world on various operations, Afghanistan, Iraq, etc. But most of my postings were in Germany, and that's where I met my wife, Nicole, who's a German native. And at the end of my career, she was already set up in her own business, and it was just the obvious thing for us to do was to settle in Germany. But we consider ourselves to be citizens of the world because all of our friends, the people that we work with, are spread to the four corners of the globe. And I began in the military as an engineer and did 3 years apprenticeship in electronics. Then I went out and I spent about 10 years working on electronic equipment. But the thing with the military is they're big into sports and adventurous training. They use that as a way to promote health and fitness and resilience and teamwork, all of those great things. And I, A, was quite good at it, and B, preferred it to getting in the back decks of a greasy, oily tank. So I used to do things like kayaking, skiing, climbing and things. And the thing with the military, because it has this infrastructure embedded in it, as you get better at things, you do more and more qualifications. Ultimately, you become an instructor. And they have facilities, or they had centers around the world. And one of them was in Bavaria. And I ultimately became the chief instructor there, where I was helping with personnel development, performance. We had a lot of work to do there with alpine ski racing, that kind of thing. So, really good quality life. But in that time, I met my wife. I also kept studying. So I did Open University degrees. I qualified in business and German. I did my professional teaching qualification, all these things that as my body got slightly older and more broken through all the sports and things and partying, I switched across to human resources. So the Army commissioned me. I became an officer and they put me through my MBA, and I spent 6 years in the human resources role there as well. So that took me from leadership and development into HR, administration, and I also managed to do deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq and these kind of places. So I had the full gamut of military experience. It was the end of that chapter that put me on the journey to where I am today, which was I joined at 16, I left at 45. I didn't feel institutionalized, and I would say I wasn't institutionalized other than that my entire identity as an adult was based around position, rank, ability, qualifications, environment that I was in. It's a very well-organized thing, as you can imagine, in the military. And I did well at it. I learned the rules. I learned how to do the thing, was very successful. And then one day I went from being in a high-profile, high-stress job in Afghanistan to come home to Germany, to be sat at home in my front room as Stephen. That was it. No more identity, no more around me, no one responsible for me, no one responsible to me, just me. And that essentially created a breakdown environment. So I had no idea who I was. I went through some struggles. I tried to drink my way through it. That clearly wasn't the answer. So thankfully I came away from that. Haven't had a drink in 9 years because I no longer need my medicine, as it turns out. But it was in the rebuilding of me that put me onto this journey, because I thought, if I literally had it all, but internally I was still that little insecure boy who didn't know who he was or what he was there for. And that turns out can be quite a traumatic and frightening experience, regardless of what your external world is. So I went through that and I rebuilt myself, and I kind of Googled myself. I had languages, I had business experience, I had an MBA, and it put me into the business coaching world. So I started doing that, and I can function as a business coach, and I work with corporates and deliver training and do all that traditional stuff. But the thing that really fires up my passion is when I see someone who's in a very senior position and they've got all the letters after the name and the big badge on the door and everything. When I get to talk to them, generally within about 5 minutes of talking to them, I can get to the human being behind the facade. And a lot of people put on a facade because it's required. The modern world expects us to, especially in a profession where you're expected to be the managing partner or the CEO, and all of these badges that society place upon us. They don't take any account for the fact that we are still that human being on the inside. And as I say, because I've done the work on me, I have this kind of sixth sense when I'm speaking to very senior people, and they sense it as well. They think, this guy really does know what it is that I'm going through right now. And I find I use that as a bridge to get to people who are struggling with their own identity, their own mindset, their own limiting beliefs. It's crazy that an international CEO can be suffering from chronic imposter syndrome. No one else can believe it, but I can, because I've been that guy, So that's kind of, I've got this functional profession, but it allows me to get access to my vocation, which is to help other people in that same circumstance to understand that they're not broken, that it's a perfectly normal reaction with their nervous system and their mind to the external environment that they find themselves in.
That's really interesting. And I've never been a high-powered CEO. I've never been in the military. I can only imagine what it must be like, the pressures you have on you and the responsibility, I guess, for so many different people, for expensive equipment, for expensive assets. What some of the biggest things that have the impact on these high-powered people? It's interesting you should
say that, but I would argue that the amount of funds you have under management or the amount of inventory that you have, it's an irrelevance. It's not more stress to look after 10 people than it is to look after 100 people. It isn't the external pressures. People always say, the workload and all these kind of things. It's not. I used the analogy in one of my recent LinkedIn posts about the Jenga stack or the Tetris stack. We have one single nervous system, one single persona that we are. And we have to squeeze being a father, being a mother, being a husband, being a CEO, whatever it may be. We have to squeeze it all inside this pile. And I find that we focus on the top part, say, he's a busy guy, or she's got a huge amount of responsibility. But the top end, the visible external factors, are all piled on top of previous life experiences, inner beliefs, limiting beliefs, childhood trauma, all of those things. So when someone breaks, I hate the word, but who displays an outward expression of the overwhelm or stress that they're feeling, it's been built on top of this pile of all the other factors, because people can become accustomed to a big input and a big inbox. They can become accustomed to delivering a briefing to 500 people. That's skills that can be learned and trained. But if they're constantly being chipped away 24/7 by this inner belief that I'm not good enough, or I'm going to be found out, or being repeatedly traumatized by an event that happened in their childhood that keeps appearing, a similar experience keeps appearing in them. Those are the bits that get us, but no one can see that. They just assume that it must be because he was the CEO of a large corporation that he broke. And I'll give you the example. I was in Afghanistan and I was running a fairly challenging role. I wasn't toe-to-toe with the bad guys, like the traditional sense of, oh, he was in a war zone, it must have been really tough. Not at all. I was dealing with a lot of sensitive environments, compassionate cases, dealing with people who had lost people, but I was all over it because I was doing my role and I was supported in my role. It was when I came home to sit alone on my own that I felt the most fear, because I felt a loss of control, a loss of direction. And it's those fears that tend to get us. These are the things that people are carrying around 24/7. They reopen them every morning before they put their feet on the ground to come out and put on their suit to become a CEO, right? So this is what I'm experiencing. So to answer your point, it's irrelevant whether you're a section head, department head, business unit lead. It doesn't matter. It's independent of the inner pressures that we're putting ourselves under.
So for you, the tipping point, I guess, or the point that made you reflect on all of this was when you arrived home. It was a completely different life. You felt differently. Maybe the pace had slowed down. What happens for other people? CEOs, for example, is it when they finally wind down after a hard day at work and then they try to get to sleep? What do you find really is a tipping point?
Well, one of the interesting reflections on the whole process I got was that leadership is a really good place to hide, because the military is all about taking responsibility for your troops. So my mindset was, how dare I care about me? I don't have time to care about me. It's not morally correct. We feed the horses, we feed the men, and then we feed ourselves. That's, officers eat last, all of that stuff. It's all true and relevant. But my point is, it's a very convenient situation to mean that I don't have to spend a great deal of time reflecting on me. So that's the other thing, that leadership can be a prophylaxis against feeling these inner thoughts. And what happened with me is it went from there, bush, to there, and it hit me like a wave all of a sudden. So, and of course, here's the other thing. Everyone is different. Everyone is an amalgam of their experiences, their beliefs, their upbringing, and their actual events that they've had happen to them. So it's unfair to say this always happens and that always happens. But I still say it tends towards the stories that people are telling themselves in their head, as opposed to the actual, list of tasks and failures. The tasks tend to be the things that push them over, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and therefore the part that everyone focuses on. My argument is we need to go right back to the fundamentals of what makes you be that way. My argument for that is, if it was just about emails and it just about meetings and it was just about budgets that we're under, why doesn't everyone break at the same point? Why isn't everyone in hospital in March when it comes to the end of the year close down? So it can't be purely the external. It's what we're built on in the internal parts, the accumulation of all these different Jenga blocks that are coming, and then bush, the end of month close down comes, or the end of year close down, and guess what? Catastrophic collapse.
Yeah, so we hear a lot about PTSD in terms of the military in that frame. But from what I hear from you, the point comes where all that you've been building up inside, either something changes where you're forced to reflect on your life or reflect on your profession or whatever it may be, and then it triggers all these feelings, and then it almost is like a PTSD effect, regardless of what kind of
let's quickly cover
what
that is, because PTSD is an emotional trauma response. So what it means is, in our non-verbal subconscious brain, there's been an event or a situation that's been stamped in there with a little pin in it. This is how your nervous system responds to it. It says, that nearly killed us, figuratively or literally. That nearly killed us, stay away from that. And that is pegged in our subconscious, and it is nothing to do with chronology. So the subconscious doesn't say, that happened years ago, we can forget about that. All it does is you find yourself in a circumstance, or you hear a noise or a smell or something like that, that tells the nervous system we're in the vicinity of that thing that nearly killed us before. Therefore, we need fight, flight, and everything else. That's the system that operates. So I'm involved with various different people who are working on cutting edge treatment to talk to that non-verbal part of the memory, using music, using rhythm, using various different techniques to tamp down that amygdala response. So that's another podcast, to be honest, that we can talk about there. Yeah. Right, but here's the thing. So it's important that you remember it's an emotional pin in a board. It's nothing to do with consciousness or whether it happened last week or last year. When we feel that, it takes us back to that moment, and our nervous system goes up, and we lose. When we are in a high stress environment, we lose cognitive function. Which is why it's so important to detune our nervous system, doing micro breaks all day, every day, to keep our cognitive function happening. Because from an evolutionary perspective, being clever isn't clever. So if you're getting attacked by a bear, doing an analysis of why that bear's so upset, and is it a brown bear or a grizzly bear? We don't need that stuff. We need all of the blood in our body to be pumping into our muscles, because we want to be doing, max revs to get away. You see what I mean? So, but our nervous system doesn't understand whether we've been chased by a bear or whether we're going into a big presentation. But it goes through the same process. Because breathing heavy, pumping up all our muscles, and it takes away our cognitive function. And that's why we can't think of things, or we can't say things, So understanding our nervous systems is good for anyone, whether you're dealing with post-traumatic stress or whether you're just dealing with life nowadays. Is an incredibly stressful experience.
So I was thinking of a friend of mine. She was a very successful senior level person at an international company, and all of a sudden she was made redundant. She didn't expect it. She didn't see it coming, and it really hit her for six. Fast forward 3 years later, she's on her next role, being very successful. Something didn't go quite right. She had a fight with her boss, and all of a sudden, it's almost like that fight or flight mechanism kicked in again, and that trauma that she'd experienced before, where she'd been made redundant, she didn't expect it, kicked in, and she really lost a lot of I guess self appreciation or self confidence and self belief. And then things calmed down again. And then fast forward another 3 years, every time something little that otherwise would be little becomes a mountain, basically. What would you recommend to people like this? Because there's many of us that have experienced this day to day, probably, and just trying to fight that fight or flight and not really knowing what to do.
We really are going off here into a full PhD thesis version of what is possible. But ultimately, what has to happen is that emotional trigger has to be accessed, and it has to be detuned. And it doesn't necessarily involve talk therapy, interestingly enough. The actual event is irrelevant. What actually happened, to a degree, it's irrelevant. So people don't have to be re-traumatized. So tell me again, how did it feel, and all those kind of things. We don't necessarily have to go there. All we have to do is we have to create a situation where that person has a set of tools with which they can reach to apply when they start to feel that nervous system response, to detune the nervous system. So that's how we would manage that.
Okay, so what do those tools look like then? What kind of tools can we use? Give us an example of three.
Here's the problem. We think we're clever, right? But our conscious cognitive verbal brain, where we form sentences and use speech, that is the last part of our body and physiology to the party. The rest of us, the non-verbal sort of reptile part, they've been dealing with real problems. We think we're special because we got presentations and we got bosses and we got mortgages to pay. But trust me, if we go back 20,000, 50,000 years, our ancestors had real problems. Yeah. And over the millennia, our entire system, our bodies have evolved to deal with it. With the exception of the appendix and the earlobes, every other part of our body is there for a reason. And every emotion, every response, every itch, every sneeze, every, hairs on the back of your neck, they've all got a purpose. So what we have to understand is what we used to consider as woo-woo, when we talk about breath work and touching your fingers and all these kind of things. But because we're so clever and we've watched TED Talks and we've got YouTube videos and things, we don't believe that such simple things can be effective. So the physiological sigh, for instance, right? And that's just a double intake, sharp intake, and then a breath out, a long breath out, right? That's how your body gets told that the threat is gone and we can calm down and we can switch into rest and digest again. So you can force your body to do that by breathing. Breathing's one of the few inputs that we can physically control to get at our nervous system. So if you imagine a deer's being chased by a lion, the lion gets bored or tired and the deer gets away. Right? The first thing the deer will do is shake and shudder. And what that's doing is it's pumping all the adrenaline out of its muscles and everything like that. But if you're monitoring the breath, it would go. Another closer example is when a baby is tired or hurts itself, or your kid bumps his knee and comes for a hug from daddy and everything like that. They'll be crying and tell you all the stories. No, it was terrible and all that. And they will finish by going, and that will be the last major breath that they take in that episode. Because that's their nervous system saying, I've told daddy, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. He's kissed it better. The threat's gone. Let's go back into rest and digest mode. So we learned that stuff when we were babies, and we can still use that when we're CEOs.
So it's almost that old saying that people say when it's like, I just been so busy, I need to catch my breath.
Precisely, it's called the physiological
kind of means
sigh.
that.
And that's reverse engineering it. That's you telling your body the threat must be gone. So that's one simple, almost instantaneous impact that it has. The second thing is singing or humming. Sitting on the tube or driving along. What you're doing is you're causing a vibration on your vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve runs throughout your body, connects to all your major organs, because that's the nervous system control system. That's the part that says, are we fighting tigers, or are we digesting our food, repairing our body and preparing for sleep or reproduction, that kind of thing. So by humming or singing or, la, 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 making any kind of constant tone sound with our throat, it's like massaging your vagus nerve. And that says the only time you'd be singing or humming a tune means there's no tigers outside. Because that's it. Your nervous system is about, are we about to die or are we not? That's the binary decision that it makes. So if you're making movements and making it do things that are aligned with rest, digest, relax, and everything, then it will then turn off the cortisol, turn off the adrenaline, and it will start to go into it will help your immune system, it will help your digestion system, all of these kind of things. So those are ways that we can access our nervous system. Another really crazy one is using your eyes. If you look up at 10 o'clock, right, and force your eyes over to that direction, just by doing it forces your body to do a big sigh. Crazy stuff, right? So you push your eyes over whichever side you want, and it's connection to your vagus nerve, which runs essentially the whole length of your body, and it causes you to do that physiological sigh. So it's this idea of understanding the systems that your body uses to control stress and then applying them yourself.
I guess that's something you could almost do anywhere. Even if you're in a meeting or something like that, you can do that. Catch your breath. No one's really going to notice.
Precisely.
And off you go. Calm. Actually, it's very funny. We actually spoke in a separate podcast episode to Eva Lidber, who's a voice coach, and she was saying exactly the same thing. When you're going to go and do a presentation, just hum to yourself, or in your car on the way there, just sing to yourself. Talk as loud as you want. Just and you calm yourself down. You're ready for the presentation. You're ready to take on the audience.
So it's understanding these systems. And the other one is breathe. Use breathe as an analogy, which is breathing regularly and evenly through the heart, just like that. Because what's happening around the heart is you have neurons as well.
Okay.
And the electrical signals between the heartbeat, it's called the heart rate variability or the heart rate variance. That's the electrical signal that tells the brain, are we under threat? Are we under stress or not? So, because the brain's really dumb. It will believe anything you tell it. It shouldn't have a direct contact with the outside world. So it relies on all these interfaces that it has. So by controlling your breathing, using that acronym, breathe regularly and evenly through your heart, by putting your hands on there, doing something that you're focusing in on, what you do is you regulate your heartbeat but you're regulating the variance between it. And that's the signal to your brain to say, he wouldn't possibly breathe like that if there were a saber-toothed tiger coming at him. So we must be calm outside. Okay, adrenaline off, cortisol off. Let's start to repair the body. Let's start to calm down, lower the blood pressure, all these kind of things.
Okay, so those are 3 very practical tips of what we could do when we get into that situation. But I guess prevention is better than cure. So this is what I understand you've been working on quite a lot, is not just the cure side, but the preventative side as well. Tell us a bit more about that.
One of the big things we say in the army is train hard to fight easy. Okay, so and using my Jenga stack again as an analogy, you may have a big event happening later today or later in the week or something, but you can prepare for that in advance, because doing these exercises little and often, this is the cure to it. Don't stress yourself all week and hope that on Friday night you'll be able to drink your own body weight in Guinness and everything will be okay. Every hour on the hour you can be doing just 30 seconds of these exercises, or any opportunity, brushing your teeth, waiting for an elevator, waiting at traffic lights and all that. Use that as your cue to practice this breathing stuff. And what you're doing on your Jenga stack is you're chipping away down here at the lower end. But the net output of that is the top part gets lowered down, leaving you much more capacity that when something real happens, fires happen, car crashes happen, arguments happen, but you've got so much more capacity with which to deal with it. So train hard, fight easy. Do these exercises all the time, and you will find all of my clients report a moment where I get them doing these reps, because the thing is, we can understand it consciously, but to rewire the brain neurologically, we have to repeat the patterns often, several times a day, every single day. And when I can convince my clients to do that, within 4 or 6 weeks, an event will happen that traditionally would have triggered them, and they just go, oh, and they deal with it. And it's not till after the fact they go, who was that guy who just appeared there at that situation? And it's the preparation and planning that goes into it. So that's it. And it shouldn't be a task. When you're doing these exercises, you should physically feel better for doing them. And they become an almost reward. So supposing you're waiting at traffic lights, oh, God damn it, I'm going to be late, that. Oh, traffic lights, that's 2 minutes I get to myself where I can do my breathing. Within a matter of weeks, you're praying for red lights. Seriously, it's that kind of perspective shift. So it's little and often and become habitual, and it becomes a lifestyle. And eventually you're looking around and all these people freaking out and stressing out, and you're like, hey, what's your problem, man? So there's 1,000 ways to approach this. And once you get into it and you stack more and more skills on it, it's incredible the impact that you can have.
So can you give us an example or two of some of the people that you've worked with, the types of people? A lot of our audience really do feel the pressure. We're either business owners or C-suites. We have a lot of pressure on us and we feel it. What are some of the examples of some of the clients you've had success
again,
with?
like I say, it can be a painter and decorator, or it can be an international CEO, because from their perspective, they've kind of become accustomed to the size of the role. But really the major changes that I've seen has been the unforeseen changes that people come. They'll come with a specific issue or a problem. Maybe it could be a relationship. My team's not this, or my wife's not this, that kind of thing. And I say, okay, let's look at you. Let's work on you. And they very often, it's not my problem. I'm cool. I'm fine. Okay, no worries. Let's go and work at you. Because what we do is when we do the internal work ourselves, life doesn't stop coming at us. The emails are still arriving, the arguments are still happening and all that sort of thing. What we do is we grow our own personal resilience inside. And guess what? When we then dealing with our wife or our children or our board members, we turn up in such a more calm state. And the way the energy works. So if you're stressed and I'm stressed, we're off to the races. Yeah. But when you arrive stressed in my office and I'm already in this chilled out zone and I'm aware of where your energy is coming from, because nervous negative energy and anger is always coming from a position of insecurity and feeling of personal fear or threat. So once you realize it's not a competition, then I'll let you expel all your air and your fear and everything. But because I'm not matching your energy will then match mine. So I'll calm you down, and guess what? We'll then have sensible conversations where we'll work together and we'll collaborate and we'll sort things out. I'll give you an example. One guy, financial advisor, I worked with him 5 weeks into working with him. He said, my wife would like to talk to you. Why is that? Because the changes she's seen in me in 5 weeks, she wants to know what it is that I'm doing. And she became a client. And I helped the two of them understand themselves as individuals, but they got a much deeper understanding of each other as well. And they learned to use my strategies, my processes together. And after 20 years of marriage, it changed their relationship completely, making them much happier and much more appreciative of each other. So those are the kind of, I wouldn't say unintended, but the sort of unforeseen outcomes that can happen, because once you understand yourself, you become comfortable in your own skin. You become impervious to the outside world coming at you. And people see that and they become curious and they want to know more about it. And you become a better leader. You become a better husband, a better father. So it kind of emanates out. And that's how I fix relationship problems. But people will come to me and say, I overeat. Can you help me? Yes. I smoke too much. I drink too much. Can you help me? Yes. Is it a different system? No. Because once we understand our nervous system and our mind and we calm ourselves down, the body doesn't need alcohol. It doesn't need nicotine. It doesn't need other drugs. It doesn't need Haribo, although the jury's still out on that one. I was a heavy drinker for 35 years. But then when I fixed my mind and understood my nervous system, importantly, I haven't had another drink. But most importantly, I've never felt the urge or need to have a drink. Because I've cured my sickness, I don't need my medication. So I was using alcohol to take the edge off my high-performing controller nervous system response.
Fantastic. Look, we could talk all day about this, but I'm conscious that we can't. I think we're definitely going to have to do another episode together to delve a bit more deeply into some of these things. If our listeners want to get in touch with you,
so
how can they do so? How can they get your help?
Free resources on there. You can look there for Get Smart About Stress or search Stef Hinds. There's free access to a 5-day course, which will give you all of these kind of exercises and explain them in greater detail. I also have a community called Stress Management and Resilience Training, which you can access from the YouTube channel. That's on a school platform. But I do most of my day-to-day business on LinkedIn. You'll see me posting on there. My wife and I also rescue street dogs, so I'm the LinkedIn dog guy. When I tried to keep business separate from dog rescue, but I found I got most of my insights that were valuable to people in business while I was out walking my dogs. So now I just flip up my phone, share some insights or advice while I'm walking my dogs. And ironically, that seems to be the most appealing part of my my content, is the fact that I'm walking in the woods and they get to see my dogs and everything. So yep, you'll find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and my school app, which is Get Smart About Stress.
Amazing. It sounds like walking the dogs is part of your medicine as well. So it must be ticking a lot of boxes.
People think that I'm some kind of martyr. We've rescued 1,500 dogs, right? I do it because I love it, and because I don't rescue dogs, dogs rescue me.
Amazing. Well, that's a good line I think we could all stick to and all take on board. Thank you very much for your time today, Stef. Thank you for your insights. Like I said, I think we'll definitely set up another chat to discover more about this, because it's been absolutely fascinating. And I think I'm going to set up a session with you as well, just to get my own nervous system under control. We've all got these
tools in us. We just don't know it.
So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to.
No, I just wanted to say, if you are a carbon-based biped, if you are a human of this planet, you possess these tools. You just need to understand. You need to have them explained to you. Then you need to understand them and practice them, which will then develop a belief in them. And then they're available for you for the rest of your life. This isn't a course. This isn't just a training. This is a change of lifestyle.
Should we be intimidated by that, or is
I use
it
mental fitness and
hard?
Physical fitness in the same terms. We need to work both all day, every day, if we're going to maintain a balance. In physical fitness, we're lifting heavy things up to get stronger. In mental fitness, we're putting the heavy things down to get stronger. So that's the analogy. The beautiful thing is, it's not a task. It's a joy to live this way. Okay, so I'm the opposite to a fitness trainer. I won't beast you. I'll make you chillax.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much today to Stef Hinds for joining us. Thank you for your openness, your insight, and your wisdom. For our listeners and those watching us on YouTube, if this conversation resonated with you or made you pause for thought, you're not alone. Definitely got to me. As Stef reminded us, even the highest performers have moments of doubt, transition and burnout. And acknowledging that isn't a weakness, it's a strength and something that you can work on. If you'd like to connect with Stef or learn more about his work, I'll put the links in the show notes so you can find them there. Otherwise, just Google Stef Hinds, StefHinds, and you'll find him. Or look for the Dog Man patrolling the woods of Germany. For more practical advice, inspiring conversations, and credible insights from trusted professionals across law and business, be sure to subscribe and follow Mahami Matters wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Chris Adams. Stay informed, stay empowered, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us on Mahami Matters. If you found today's episode valuable, subscribe and connect with me to stay updated. Join me again soon as we continue to bring you credible insights, practical strategies, and trusted advice to empower your professional journey. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered.